Eamon Hawke, the guy who did that Crowder video, is doing a GoFundMe to raise money, and we should put a link into the podcast and YouTube description to raise money to get us, I don't know if it was actually a supercomputer, but getting a really powerful computer so that they can render their work quicker. And you go and you look at their website, and it's like all these amazing animations of these right wingers. And somebody I had talked to online was like, trying to get some exposure for this, and they're like, if the DNC, this person's not terribly political, the DNC had half a brain, they'd be funding this. Now, of course, the DNC can't, but if Eamon Hawke was a right winger, the Mercers or somebody would have dropped supercomputer. You're going to have multiple supercomputers. You're going to have a whole staff of people who are going to be turning this stuff out. You're going to be an organization, whatever it is, like Animations for the Right or whatever it is. Like, there would be no hesitation. And there's, the mechanisms for the disinformation on the right is just much more powerful than it is. Never mind even from like just even like mainstream on some level.
I don't even buy the Mercers, right? I get all that. I get that they have the money, and we do too, by the way. Nina Turner raised just as much money as her opposition did, and they knew that the super PACs were coming. The question is, do we have to outthink them every step of the way? But simultaneously, we as progressives, it is not the same. If you decide to run for office today and you're not a Nina Turner and you're not a name, you're not going to raise the same amount of money that you could 3 or 4 years ago, because the algorithms have absolutely shifted in favor of the right wing. And that can be regulated. That can be regulated.
No, I agree. I mean, I think the way that you regulate this too is you also just make it not as profitable. But
it's designed to be profitable. I don't agree with you, Sam, on this. I think that the intention is that it's not that it's more profitable to be full of hate and have men on air more than women. It's Fox News figured out very quickly, oh, you put more women on, more people watch. It doesn't work that way on YouTube. It just doesn't. There are very few women who host shows, like independent women who host shows. There always has to be a man, or it's just a male show, because the audience is more male driven because of...
You're talking about politics.
Yeah, I'm talking about specifically politics. Yes.
Well, my point is that you can regulate how the algorithm works for all of this type of social media, where it's not driving a specific type of content, and it's not feeding, it's not feeding the desire for the type of conflict, and there's ways of doing that, and you can.
I'll be honest, I don't want to do this anymore. The amount of hate I get, and I know Emma gets it too. Listen, this is a moment. We have we're talking to each other behind the scenes. You know how much hate women get who are on these shows? We don't want to do it anymore. It's painful because.
I still want to do it because I have no other skills.
Emma, that's BS. You're also 10 years younger than me. 10 years younger. You have more energy too. No, but the reality is it's like, we understand the service, and like for every 10 horrible, nasty messages we get, death threats, thousands of followers that are lost, whatever it is, we have messages that are so wonderful from women, from men, from people whose lives have been changed, and it keeps us going. But the truth is, it is painful. I am not on Twitter as much anymore. It is not their goal. The strategy is to silence AOC, to silence all of these people, to silence the smaller names, to silence the entire ecosystem, because it's dangerous. Death threats. You know how many death threats we get a week? Emma, how many death threats do you get a week? How many death threats does Anna get a week? How many death threats does Cori Bush get a week? The whole lineup. And that is how this thing is built, and it has to be regulated. It's not just a funding mechanism. It is called, they're trying to silence opposition.
I agree with that, but I think that's a different conversation than the science denial. I do. I think
I disagree. Look at the people who are doing this. Same people. Joe Rogan, science denialist, attacking AOC. Tucker Carlson, science denialist, attacking AOC and Cori Bush. Sorry, Emma, go ahead.
No. I think even before Joe Rogan, before all these people, we were having these the point I was trying to make about climate change, which I feel like, I don't know, it might have, we're too far past it, but the linking of fear-based politics and unknowns, and then kind of manifesting it into larger politics of fear and resentment of certain liberal culture. Fox News has been doing that since its existence. So
the right has been doing that. I mean, Gertrude Himmelfarb, Bill Kristol's mom, was talking about undercutting the concept of science, 50 years ago.
They've just made a purer form of it.
Well, they've just, their mechanism, their delivery mechanism has improved because they have the resources and whatnot. I mean, so this dynamic is there. And then the question is, how do you mitigate or neutralize, to the extent that you can, the tactics? And I think there's a lot of different, I think the way to do it, I mean, I am hesitant to, I don't know what regulation you're talking about that would address the idea of getting a hate mail.
Okay, so I think it overlaps. It's not that it's hate mail and misogynist. It's that these communities, when you're addressing who is it who is falling for, who are the most likely people to not fall for the vaccine, understand vaccine science, or believe that climate change exists. Oh, simultaneously, they're the same people who are watching the hosts who are making money off of targeting AOC, the same hosts that are building their ecosystem. But Sam, this isn't debatable at this point. I'm sorry. I was at a conference 2 weeks ago, and the opposition leader in Turkey, a female, who's going up against Erdogan, said the same exact things. The defense minister of Northern Macedonia, a female, said the same thing was happening. An opposition leader in Hungary, a woman, same exact thing. This is happening across the world. The same, and it's the right is more organized, and we're still trying to figure out the patterns.
But
okay? And the reality.
You mean, well, I'm just confused as to how that connects to the science angle.
It's the same audience. They're the same people. Okay, so when you have men online pushing this misinformation, and male, except for Marine Le Pen maybe, and a couple of others, for the most part, there's a group of male influencers who have male audiences targeting young men who are more vulnerable to being radicalized, and they're targeting them with, whether it's misogynistic, racist, pseudo-populist, the government is out to get you. By the way, the vaccine is something you should be in fear of, and simultaneously climate change doesn't exist. All these messages overlap, just like the Republican Party in general has, the far right has a message.
So what does government do about that?
Listen, you don't think that Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, which were much more democratized,
I'm not
5 years ago.
I'm not disputing attention.
Make the algorithms open.
Well,
government can demand that.
That's what I'm saying. You make it, and what does that mean? It ultimately means make it less profitable. I mean, it ultimately means that you inhibit the business model in such a way that you cannot have this type of profitability. It won't necessarily address. It might, I think, as a knock-on impact. The sort of like the misogyny and this and that, because you're just not creating these juggernauts. You're preventing the social media from creating these juggernauts, but the underlying dynamic is gonna stay. It's just you're inhibiting the tools that they have to make it grow more. I mean, I think there's another phenomena going on. I think it's just too narrow to say that Joe Rogan is implicating this stuff, worldwide. I think he is a product as much of as, or more of a product of that than a driver of it. And the thing is that it becomes self-perpetuating, and it builds speed like a rock rolling downhill. And part of that is because it's so wildly profitable for so many of these entities to promote that stuff. And the way that you inhibit it, it seems to me, is you make it less profitable. I mean, that's just the way.
Two things can be true at once, right? So Joe Rogan, with all due respect to Joe Rogan, I don't think he's as sophisticated to think, okay, I would like to have, really thoughtful conversations with authors and comedians and actors and Bernie Sanders, as much as he realized he could pull Bernie Sanders' audience and simultaneously Elon Musk's audience. And I don't think he's as sophisticated I don't actually think he's thinking enough personally about whether or not he should be questioning the vaccine. I actually think that's a strategy that's coming from his team to build a wider net audience, just like there are people out there who dance with the left and the right.
I really don't think that's Rogan. I mean, I just think that, I think that
he has the largest podcast on the planet. You don't think he has a team that's saying, hey, Joe, maybe you should do XYZ thing? Of course. Of course.
I think there are people who feed him stuff, but I can tell you, like, when the thing was growing, I don't know, a couple of years ago, it was just like, it was not terribly different than Marin.
A couple of years ago, Jimmy Dore was more leftist than he is now. And we had real conversations, and you can find those videos from a couple of years ago where he was.
Rogan's attitude towards stuff has not really changed. He was doing the same shit 5 years ago. And I can tell you.
Was he as political?
What? Yeah, I mean, sort of.
I mean, he's had like guys like Douglas Murray, and like he's always been talking to those guys.
Charles Murray?
No, Douglas.
Oh.
Douglas.
This was, I just know how the thing started, and it was. I mean, he and Marin would just, like they were just two podcasters who were doing stuff. I mean, it was, I just, I think there are.
Oh, that's the Sam Harris guy. Sorry, never mind.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. There may be people around him that advise him at this point, but I think it's probably just more like his longtime manager or longtime agent. Like, I think it's more entertainment people. And I don't think that anybody, I think he honestly, I just think that like, he's not terribly, informed or thoughtful about some things. I mean, I just think that's basically what it is. And
so what is it about his audience that like, okay, like someone like a Tommy Lahren, for instance. Tommy Lahren is like super famous. She doesn't have a deal with Spotify, or like, I mean, and she's like dead in the political world right now. Like she's like washed up at this point.
I don't think he ever perceived himself in that world. He was just doing, what do you call it? MMA. I mean, that's what the guy was doing.
Exactly.
And then it was just like, oh, people are listening to me. And, he's a comedian. And so that starts with a notion of like, I want to go up on stage and have people listen to me. And then any idea that comes into your head, and if you don't have any sense of like what the implications are of this, I mean, it's not that. I just don't. I think that he is a different animal than, let's say, like, people who have been, work at the Daily Caller. Yes. Just in terms of like, what drives them.
Exactly. No, but that's exactly the point, Sam. He's not a Daily Caller person. He's somebody who can dance in these different spaces and endorse Bernie Sanders and then support the Hill.
Folks, there's more of what you've just saw where that came from. That's if you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you. Really, thank you.